Finally, we have to talk about the main theme, and it's mentioned in the game several times, with Gray Fox's line being one variation. During When Snake is captured, Naomi starts talking about genes and fate.
We're not sure, but we know that a person's genetic fate is determined just by the sequence of the 4 bases in their DNA.
So what about my fate? You know my DNA sequence, don't you?
Your fate? I'm sorry, I have no idea.
Of course not. You're a scientist, not a fortune teller.
There's a noteworthy optional codec call in the snowfield after fighting Sniper Wolf.
Listen, we're not responsible for her choices. Everyone decides their own fate, no matter where they were born. Words like fate, karma, it's just an excuse for giving up if you ask me.
And it's stated outright by Game's End, twice even by Naomi, both before and after the credits.
You mustn't allow yourself to be chained to fate, to be ruled by your genes. Humans can choose the type of life they want to live. The important thing is that you choose life. And then live.
So the main theme of the game is that genes aren't your fate, and the important thing is that you choose the kind of life you want to live. While Metal Gear Solid 2 is, in my opinion, Kojima's masterwork in terms of theming, particularly complex themes, I think Metal Gear Solid 1 is still his best example of how to saturate your work with a single, straightforward theme, especially in your character writing. When Otacon makes reference to his family history, he talks about how nukes are in their genes.
The truth is, my grandfather was part of the Manhattan Project. He suffered with the guilt for the rest of his life. And my father, he was born on August 6th, 1945.
The day of the Hiroshima bomb. God's got a sense of humor, all right.
3 generations of Emmerich men. We must have the curse of nuclear weapons written into our DNA.
But of course, Snake told him what was going on, and he vows to stop it.
But that's all over now. I won't take part in murder anymore.
He goes on not just to stop the Metal Gear in this game, but many others off-screen.
They sabotaged and destroyed countless Metal Gear units throughout the world.
As I mentioned in Part 2, the Colonel's entire motivation for taking part in the mission was because his niece Meryl was being held hostage. And Meryl's stated motivation for being a soldier is because she wants to understand her father. On top of that, she links that idea as her avoiding making her own decisions. In other words, not choosing the kind of life she wants to live.
I always dreamed of becoming a soldier. But I was wrong. It wasn't really my dream. My father, he was killed in action when I was younger.
You wanted to follow in your father's footsteps?
Not really. I thought that if I became a soldier, I could understand him better.
So are you a soldier yet?
I thought I was until today, but now I understand. The truth is, I was just afraid of looking at myself, afraid of having to make my own decisions in life. But I'm not gonna lie to myself anymore. It's time I took a long, hard look at myself. I want to know who I am, what I'm capable of. I want to know why I've lived the way I've lived until now.
Now, I would like to point out that the game almost at every turn shows that she isn't cut out to be a soldier, although of course there's a lot of crossover here with the theme of war being inhumane. There's the whole "you haven't taken the safety off" Rookie scene, her hesitating to shoot the soldiers when she ends up resenting war, gets captured, and Snake himself says she wasn't ready. Thematically, this all happened because she didn't choose to do this on her own. She chose to do it to try to understand her father, a genetic reason, which the game tries to invalidate as much as possible. By game's end, if Meryl doesn't make it out alive, the Colonel tells you something to really drive this home.
Colonel, about Meryl.
I already know.
Colonel?
Meryl was my daughter.
What?
I didn't find out until recently. I got a letter from her mother, my dead brother's wife. I was going to tell her after this operation was over.
Colonel,
It's okay, Snake.
So who she thought was her father wasn't even her father. On top of this, you could even infer that since the Colonel was her father, and it's at least implied he's a great soldier, his genes didn't help her on that front either. Naomi ends up having a similar situation. Her motivation for getting into genetics research was to figure out who she was.
Who are you?
I don't know myself. I don't know my real name or even what my parents looked like. I bought all my identification. But my reason for getting into genetics was true.
'Cause you want to know yourself, right?
That's right. I want to know where I came from, my age, my race, anything.
With her being obsessed with Gray Fox as a connection to her past, her motivation was revenge on Snake.
Naomi, you're too worried about the past. Isn't it enough to understand who you are now?
Understand who I am now? Why should I? No one else tries to understand me. I was alone for so long, until I met my big brother. And him.
Your big brother?
Yes. Frank Yeager.
What?
He was a young soldier when he picked me up near the Zambezi River. I was half dead from starvation, and he shared his rations with me. Yes, Frank Yeager. The man who you destroyed was my brother and my only family.
No. Gray Fox?
We survived that hell together, Frank and I. He protected me. He's my one connection. The only connection I have to my past. Yes, I waited 2 long years.
To kill me? Is that all you cared about?
Yes, that's right. 2 years. You were all I thought about for 2 long years. Like some kind of twisted obsession.
As it turns out, Gray Fox tells Snake that he's the reason she was alone to begin with.
Because I'm the one who killed her parents. I was young then, and couldn't bring myself to kill her too. I felt so bad that I decided to take her with me. I raised her like she was my own blood to soothe my guilty conscience. Even now she thinks of me as her brother. Fox. From the outside, we might have seemed like a happy brother and sister, but every time I looked at her, I saw her parents' eyes staring back at me. Tell her for me. Tell her that I was the one who did it.
By game's end, Snake makes the decision not to tell her about her parents so she doesn't repeat the cycle of hating people who murdered her family.
He told me to tell you to forget about him and to go on with your own life.
Frankie said that?
Yeah. He also said he'll always love you.
If anything, this is the game making the case that family is more than just the people who gave you your genes, and you shouldn't get hung up on taking revenge or living in the past.
I thought that if I analyzed my DNA, I could find out who I was, who my parents were. And I thought that if I knew that, then I'd know what path I should take in life. But I was wrong. I didn't find anything. I didn't learn anything.
Another really interesting use of the theme in the game is the key to the Metal Gear. Series veterans will notice that the PAL key trick is actually taken from Metal Gear 2, but it's far more appropriate here. The PAL key itself, being made of a shape memory alloy, changes shape depending on what temperature you keep it at. In other words, it's an analogy for genes. Even if the genes in people are the same, the expression changes based on the environment, just like the key. The game also goes out of its way to talk about how the genome soldiers you fight had gene therapy, hence the name. Clearly this didn't end up actually helping them beat Snake, though.
Just like with the genome soldiers, you can input all the genetic information, but that doesn't make them into the strongest soldiers.
Then there's FoxDie, a virus that attacks people based on their genes. At game's end, it is never outright stated why it killed Liquid but not Snake, but that too is because of the message here. As I stated before, one of Liquid's motivations is his want for soldiers to be honored to go with the themes about war. The other two have to do with genes, those who have his genes that he wants to protect, including himself.
We are all on the verge of death at the genetic level. We don't know when or what type of disease will occur. That's why we need the old man's genetic information.
You want Big Boss's DNA so you can save your family? It's very touching.
In nature, family members don't mate with each other, and yet they help each other to survive. Do you know why? It increases the chance that their genes will be passed on to a new generation. Altruism among blood relatives is a response to natural selection. It's called the selfish gene theory.
And him both being proud of and resentful of his genes.
You're just like Naomi.
Well, I'm not like you! Unlike you, I'm proud of the destiny that is encoded into my very genes. And then I'm going to go beyond. in order to break the curse of my heritage.
Liquid is a character basically defined by his obsession with his own genes to illustrate, much like Kojima tends to do with his villains, what he is warning people against becoming, much like the Patriots in Metal Gear Solid 2. There's a small story Liquid tells in one of his monologues about how Snake and Liquid were cloned.
So it was you and I, two fertilized eggs with exactly the same DNA. But they weren't finished yet. They used me as a guinea pig to create a phenotype in which all of the dominant genes were expressed. To create you. I got all of the recessive genes. You took everything from me before I was even born.
Now, I'd like to point out, obviously Kojima knows this isn't how dominant and recessive genes actually work, but that's not the point. He's bending the facts in service of the story. He wanted to make Liquid resent his genes as being worse, yet also genetically the same as Snake to illustrate their different choices, so this is what he went with. Of course, we later find out after the credits that he was completely wrong and he actually had the better genes.
Yes, the inferior one was the winner after all. That's right. Until the very end, Liquid thought he was the inferior one.
Much like with Meryl, this was done to hammer home the point that Liquid was completely wrong and his genes were not his fate, his choices were. In a way, he's a tragic figure. Because he was so resentful of his supposed bad genes, he became obsessed with them. He only chose to live in the shadow of his father and not really for himself.
But I'm the one Father chose.
So that's why you're so obsessed with Big Boss. Some warped kind of love.
Love? It's hate! He always told me I was inferior, and now I'll have my revenge! Now I'll finish the work that Father began. I will surpass him! I will destroy him!
In the end, he was beaten by someone who had worse genes, driving home the point even more that they don't define how good you are as a soldier. The game expresses the fate that Snake seems to have been dealt with in a very interesting way. Liquid describes their genes as being like a curse.
But we're not ordinary twins. We're twins linked by cursed genes.
Solidus will call them evil in the next game.
My clone brothers and I are called monsters, replicates of evil genes.
A small bit of Liquid's story of their cloning is written to try and build on Snake's burden.
They fertilized an egg with one of Father's cells, and then let it divide into 8 clone babies. Then they transferred the clones to someone's uterus and later intentionally aborted 6 of the fetuses to encourage strong fetal growth. You and I were originally octuplets.
Octuplets?
Yes. The other 6 of our brothers were sacrificed to make us. We were accomplices in murder before the day we were even born.
Naomi makes a similar reference as well.
It's your genes. They make you predisposed towards violence.
And although it seems cryptic, this is also the subject of Raven's monologue about Snake.
You are a snake which was not created by nature. You and the boss. You are from another world. A world that I do not wish to know. In the natural world, there's no such thing as boundless slaughter. There's always an end to it. But you are different.
What are you trying to say?
The path you walk on has no end. Each step you take is paved with the corpses of your enemies. Their souls will haunt you forever. You shall have no peace.
And there's something else the game makes a point to say that Snake carries with him. In Psycho Mantis' speech, first he argues that people's own thoughts are only defined by their desire to spread their genes.
And each mind that I peered into was stuffed with the same single object of obsession. That selfish and atavistic desire to pass on one seed. It was enough to make me sick. Every living thing on this planet exists to mindlessly pass on their DNA. We're designed that way.
And he argues against the theme of love.
Humans weren't designed to bring each other happiness. From the moment we're thrown into this world, we're fated to bring each other nothing but pain and misery.
But then he tells a story meant to parallel Snake killing Big Boss and makes another reference to Snake's cursed genes.
The first person whose mind I dove into was my father's. I saw nothing but disgust and hatred for me in his heart. My mother died in childbirth, and he despised me for it. I thought my father was going to kill me. That's when my future disappeared. I lost my past as well. When I came to, the village was engulfed in flames.
Are you saying that you burned your village down to bury your past?
I see that you have suffered the same trauma. We are truly the same, you and I. I've seen true evil. You, Snake, you're just like the boss. No, you're worse. Compared to you, I'm not so bad.
Naomi brings this up during the torture segment of the game and reinforces the line Snake crossed in killing his father.
No. Wait. There was a man who said he was my father.
Where is he?
Dead. By my own hand.
Big Boss.
What? Big Boss? I had no idea.
There was no way you could. It happened in Zanzibar 6 years ago. Only Snake and I know the real truth of what happened there.
So, is it true? Was Big Boss really your father?
That's what he said. That's all I know.
And you were able to kill him, knowing that?
Yup.
How?
He wanted it. Besides, some people just need killing.
That's patricide.
Yup. That's the trauma that Mantis was talking about. The one we share in common.
Is that why you left Foxhound?
Let's just say that I needed to be alone for a while, and Alaska was the perfect place.
This stands in contrast to Liquid talking about helping family members in order to help your genes survive. Yet Liquid still resents Snake for killing Big Boss because he wanted revenge.
You should understand me, brother. You killed our father with your own hands. You stole my chance for revenge.
The game makes a big deal of Snake killing his father because it's symbolically Snake rejecting his own genes, putting him on the right side of the themes. Snake killed Big Boss because of who he was, not because of his genes.
I'm just surprised you're willing to sacrifice yourself. You got the genes of a soldier, not a savior.
You trying to say that I'm only interested in saving my own skin?
I wouldn't go that far, but
I don't know what the hell my genes look like, and I don't care. I operate on instinct.
like an animal?
I'm going to save Meryl. I don't need an excuse.
Okay.
And I'm not doing it for someone else either. I'm gonna save Meryl for myself. Colonel, don't worry.
Snake, thanks.
I understand. I'm sorry.
In the end, Liquid was killed by Foxdie because he chose only to be defined by his genes, and Snake lived because he didn't let them define him.
I only felt truly alive when I was staring death in the face. I don't know. Maybe it's written into my genes. I think it's time for me to look for a new path in life.
A new path?
A new purpose.
Will you find it?
I'll find it. I know I'll find it.